Hello, I'm Molly Fraser, and I'd like to thank the Oakville Library for giving me the opportunity for making this recording. I think it's a great way to promote local authors, and it's good to have something more to look at in this time of trying to amuse ourselves. I've written all sorts of books in my time. I've written early childhood books, early chapter books for young readers. I've written middle grade non-fiction. I've also written some contemporary, modern YA books and some fantasy YA books, as well as adult novels. Now, in case you're wondering about my accent, it's a New Zealand accent. I grew up in New Zealand, and even though I've moved to Canada and lived here for many years, I haven't lost the accent. I think I'm stuck with it. Now, the books I want to talk about today are young adult books. They tell two sides of the same story, one from the point of view of a girl and the other from the point of view of a boy. They both go to the same school, and they're both going to be going to the same high school shortly. The girl is Hannah and the boy is Jamie. In grade 7, Jamie gave Hannah a very cruel nickname. The class was studying alliteration one day, and that is the repetition of the same letter at the beginning of the word. And Jamie, who fancies himself as a comedian, decided to give people names using alliteration. He called himself Joking Jamie, and he looked at Hannah and said, "And you can be Hippo Hanna." Now, this was particularly mean because Hannah is overweight. She's also quiet and shy, and she doesn't stick up for herself. Her friend Erin does stick up for her at times. There's no real excuse for Jamie's teasing and bullying. He carried it on through grade 7 and grade 8, and Hannah fully expects him to be teasing and bullying her in grade 9. We really want to see her get more self-confidence, and we want to see Jamie realize what he is doing. But, you have to read the books before you can find that out. So, before more ado, I will read the first chapter of Hippo Hanna. In Food Right, I stood before the potato chip section, answering the siren call of dill pickle, sour cream, and onion. My green supermarket basket already held 6 chocolate bars. I jumped at the sound of Jamie Connor's voice behind me. Oh, just my luck to meet him here. Then I heard Kent Wing's horse laugh and knew that Jamie had a sidekick with him. "Hey, Hippo," called Kent. "Just the girl we wanted to meet," said Jamie, grinning like a cat after a pigeon. He looked down at the green basket. "We'll help you with your shopping." Kent neighed. Jamie handed him a Mars bar. "She wants you to have this." He jammed his face right next to mine. "Don't you, Hippo?" "Yes." If I kept quiet, this whole episode might end quickly. After moving the wrapping, Kent stuffed the whole thing into his mouth. When a string of chocolate dribbled down his chin, I felt sick. Jamie looked at the shelf. "What chips do we want?" "Barbecue." Kent pulled down a bag. "How many?" Glimpsing coins in my hand, Jamie prized open my fingers. "Only 1 bag if she gets the chalky." Shaking his head, he dropped the bars onto the chip shelf. "All these calories are so bad for you." Kent took down 2 more bags of chips. "Good choice." When Jamie nodded at Kent, they marched me off to the front of the supermarket. I blinked back some tears as the cashier glanced at me with her eyebrows raised. When I didn't respond, she rang up the purchases. "Our little friend is paying," said Kent. I dropped the money onto the counter, and the cashier counted it out. "You're 25 cents short." Jamie dug a coin from his pocket. "That's a quarter you owe me." He took the supermarket bag. "Thanks a lot, Hippo. We'll really enjoy these." Kent sniggered as they swaggered towards the door. "See you later." "Much later." I slumped onto the nearby bench. If I waited long enough, they would go home. The cashier looked at me. You okay? I nodded. I thought those guys were bothering you. The cashier's eyes were so kind I blinked back, more tears. It's my break time. She pushed the green closed sign to the end of the counter. I'll show you out the back way in case they're still hanging around. I followed her through the staff-only entrance. The only good thing about this horrible meeting was that Jamie and Kent did not know I had $10 in my pocket. That night, our dinner table was laden with spicy pork chops, applesauce, scalloped potatoes, broccoli, and dishes of homemade chocolate pudding. When I counted the chops on the platter, I noticed there was an extra one. But if I made a move towards that, Mom would say, Hannah, let your brother have that. If you're hungry, there's plenty of cottage cheese. I hated the gummy taste and lumpy texture of cottage cheese. Of course, Melody liked it. My sister could consume an entire cow without gaining a single ounce. But if I even dreamed about a hot roast beef sandwich with mushroom gravy, the scales jumped several pounds. My brother and sister were discussing their timetables for the fall. It's absolutely gross, said Melody. They've changed my English and they've given me stubs. Oh, Jeff Scott shook his head. She's too tough. As for Richter, he's much easier. I listened, as I usually did at the dinner table, unless somebody asked me a direct question. Although this would be my first year at high school, I'd heard my brother and sister talk about their teachers for many years. My schedule showed Miss Stubbs for English, but I kept that information to myself. So, will this be a big glory year for football, said Dad to Scott. Maybe not, said Scott. I found out today that Andy's back. I thought that kind of kid graduated last year. Well, he did, but he's redoing math and picking up physics. Bad luck. But you should be all right, since you did take the team to the finals. Scott grimaced. Well, his overall record was better than mine. He won everything before he broke his arm, and I lost the first 2 games when I came in. He'll have to try harder. Maybe I should have a word with Bert Chalmers and see which way he's leaning. Scott's fork clanged onto the plate. Dad, stay out of it. You'll make things worse for me. Said Dad. Scott grinned at me as he stabbed the last pork chop. They'd been talking about Andy Connor, brother to the horrible Jamie, who had 2 other brothers, Steve, who'd left school, and Owen in grade 10. I forgot. Mom reached back to the buffet. Paul, this letter came for you. When she handed him the letter, Dad used his thumbnail to slit the envelope open. As he scanned the sheet, his eyebrows rose. Oh, crap. What? Said Mum. He tossed the paper down the table. Mum read it, looking equally surprised. After all these years? I don't need the aggravation, Tessa. You know what she's like. Who are you talking about? Scott asked. My sister Zoe, your crazy aunt. The one in Florida, said Melody. Is she coming here? She wants to see your father, said Mum. They're not on good terms. We never got on. As kids we fought like cats and dogs. Then why is she coming now? Asked Scott. Who knows? We'll find out when she turns up on the doorstep. Melody put down her fork. Is she going to stay here? Mum glanced again at the letter. She doesn't say. If she does, where's she going to sleep? Good point. In the past, when we had guests to stay, Melody and I bunked together, and the guest took her bedroom with our parents' old queen-size bed. Oh, we'll worry about that when it happens, said Dad. If I know Zoe, she'll pick a fight as soon as she gets here and leave in a big huff. I ate every single scrap of broccoli, although I much preferred it with cheese sauce. I was looking forward to that chocolate pudding, even though Mum would not give me the whipped cream the others got. I would be served a no-fat topping made from an edible oil product. I'll eat my pudding later, said Melody. Scott smirked. If it's still there, Hannah might inhale it. Well, she won't, said Mum. Hannah's much more careful about her diet these days. Not so you'd notice, said Dad. Paul, said Mum. I couldn't eat anything else after that. Pushing back my chair, I mumbled something about tidying my room and stumbled up the stairs. I wedged a chair under the door handle just in case Mum followed me to see if I was upset. She usually didn't. I'd eat the last package of chips instead of my chocolate pudding. Behind the magazines on my bookcase, I found the crinkly foil bag. I tore open the top to inhale the sharp scent of sour cream and onion. Then I crammed handfuls into my mouth. I lay back on the bed, licking the crumbs from my fingers and the bag before stuffing the empty package under my pillow. Tomorrow was garbage day. I'd sneak the chip bag out of the house into the can when it was on the street. Mum thought I'd stopped eating chips, and she didn't know about the chocolate bars or the cans of frosting I'd stashed in my room. During the summer, Mum had become worried about my weight after reading too many of those magazine articles about obese kids. She dragged me to our family doctor. I looked at Dr. Schuler and decided a plump person wasn't the ideal one to give me advice about weight. The doctor measured me, weighed me. Our old bathroom scale showed pounds, while the doctor showed kilos. I did a quick conversion in my head and noted I had gained a few pounds since I last weighed myself at home. Then Dr. Schuler checked my blood pressure and asked me some embarrassing questions about my periods. She tapped the numbers into her computer file and turned to face my mother. Hannah should cut out all junk food and eat balanced meals, she said. Some of that weight gain is from puberty, but she should be careful at this stage. Chubby children can grow into obese adults. Why was she talking about me as if I wasn't even sitting beside her? I looked at the doctor's round stomach in her navy skirt and wondered if she'd been a chubby child. Chubby sounded so much more friendly than fat. The doctor handed Mum a green book. This is a food diary. She opened it. You can see the pages are divided into sections, 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, where Hannah can write down everything she eats. I peered over Mum's shoulder. If this was my food diary, then wasn't she explaining it to me? Maybe she thought that fat equaled dumb and I couldn't be trusted to follow basic instructions. Now here's the master list. The bright yellow sheet was called Healthy Choices. If you follow it carefully, you should see a notable difference in Hannah. Make a follow-up appointment for 3 months' time and bring the food diary with you. At home, Mum stuck the page on the fridge and said the whole family was eating better. Scott and Dad rebelled at the salads and skinless chicken breasts in the first week. Even Melody said the food was boring and she never cared what she ate. I don't see why the whole family should suffer because Hannah eats too much, said Dad. Cook the same food as before and give her smaller helpings. Then we'll all be happy. Later that night, I overheard him discussing Grandma Hinton. He told Mum I'd inherited his mother's dumpy shape. Grandma had died before I was born. What was exactly wrong with your mother? Said Mum. When Dr. Schuler asked me for more details of your family health, I wasn't too sure. Heart, I think. But she was the only one that had a problem. Marilyn and us boys are as healthy as horses. You could lose a little weight. This is solid muscle, said Dad, patting his firm stomach. I grew curious about my dumpy grandmother. In the family albums, I found an old photo showing Grandma and Grandpa Hilton, with Dad looking very much like Scott. I recognized my Toronto Aunt Marilyn standing next to him. The other two were Uncle Kurt, who lived in England, and my crazy Aunt Zoe in Florida. Well, the grandma was rather fat. She had a really kind face and a wide smile. I wished I'd known her. She looked like she'd bake a mean apple pie. After that visit to the doctor, Mum tried to give me healthy food for the next few weeks, and I tried to cut down on chips and pop. Then Mum's Hungarian genes overcame Dr. Schuler's healthy choices. But Mum always remembered to buy me a carton of cottage cheese every time she went shopping. Food Diary, August 29. Meal 1. Small yogurt, 1 peach, cup of skim milk. Snack, 1 small apple. Meal 2. Salad with tuna, tomatoes and celery, low-fat dressing. Snack, 1 peach. Meal 3. Small pork chop, applesauce, broccoli, small spoon of scalloped potatoes. Right, so that's the end of chapter 1. Obviously it goes on to tell you some more about Hannah. A word about the covers for Hippo Hanna and Joking Jamie. They were photographs taken by my daughter. I told her I wanted a fast food one for Hannah and a school for Joking Jamie, and she came up with these, and I think they are great. The fries look almost edible. The YA fantasy books that I have written, there are 3 of them. The first is Blade and Blood. This is followed by Treason and Trouble. And the last one in the trilogy is Storm and Sword. They're full of all the usual things in fantasy, magic and battles and murders and all those good things. The 2 adult books that I mentioned are set in New Zealand, and their main character is a little bit different from the average one because she's elderly and she lives in a retirement home. These books are about V, V-E-E. V is short for Victoria, and V again. And an adult reader in your household might enjoy them. All my books are on Amazon in Kindle format and in paperback. And you can visit my website at www.mollyfraser.ca. Thanks very much for watching and for listening, and I hope it was enjoyable.